Steve McQueen's Widows is a tale of three women connected by their husbands' underworld dealings. When one of the husbands set up the remaining crew of partners, the widows are left with a debt that they can hardly fathom repaying. Veronica, in her fear, seeks out the other women, looking to hatch a plan to invade the home of a former mayor in Chicago. And his home is $5 million. It's not the heist of the century, but lives are on the line. Widows is an outlier in the crime and heist genre. Its gender politics subvert the usual tag team of men with proficient and expert skill. Instead, it depicts how patriarchy, misogyny, and intimate partner violence can trigger criminalization for women. It is not the adrenaline rush or the thrill of the heist that leads them to the mayor's home, but a husband's calculated betrayal. In the article of Widows and Maids, Production, Reproduction, Caregiving, Alessandra Reyno expresses that the patriarchy is a system of accumulation that is also death-driven and relies on gendered labor to pay back its charge.
Yes, and he knows this is not your store.
What if I told you that Harry owed a lot of money?
You're nothing now. Welcome back.
The women don't suddenly become friends in the film Widows. After the heist, or even in its organization, tensions are fraught because any mistake is fatal. Widows proves different than other crime films where women are the protagonists because everyone successfully gets away. And this is in stark contrast from films such as Set It Off or Thelma and Louise, where in those films, women are often victims of their objectification or the labor conditions in a capitalistic society that forces them to rob a bank or a convenience store. Widows proves that cinema doesn't have to punish women protagonists in the heist and thriller genre, but showcase how overlaps of marginalization can create a heist of a lifetime.
You know what? If you don't want to be here, then maybe you shouldn't. There's a door in our...
Too much. My boss is kind of a dick.
One sold it there, $6,000, 47. Buyer 47, bought it $6,000.
So where are we gonna go celebrate, huh?
Gold Chevy. I say it's a 1200.
Black women's representation in the film Widows is also important in how the women characters navigate the criminal world and exist in the genre of heist. Veronica, a dark-skinned middle-aged black woman, reverses the role of Mammy and Jezebel that black women actresses are often restricted to. The narrative is persuaded by Veronica's grief. In the film's opening act, through flashbacks and present scenes, her grief at the death of her husband and son is depicted vividly. But as Veronica corrals further into the depth of criminality, McQueen chooses hard cuts when showcasing Veronica's explosion of emotion. He seems to rob the spectator of her earlier vulnerability, but when she's finally at the cusp of victory and kills her husband, she lets out an anguished cry before placing the gun that was used to kill the mayor in his hands. Veronica as a character doesn't easily fit into the space of femme fatale or heroine. She doesn't use her sexuality to gain intel, and her identity as a black woman places her outside of traditional femininity and identification with a white audience. As reflected in the essay by William J. Simon on affect and criticality in Steve McQueen's Widows, there is thus a paradoxical expectation of widows being particular in one sense and transcendent in another. If it is true, as we have seen, that the melodramatic mode can be understood as both an inherently critical and an inherently complicit way of organizing the filmic imaginary, it might be useful to allow Widows to derive its importance not only from its quasi-spiritual transcendence of genre, but also from its longing to reconfigure the imaginary, yet semi-structured worlds that genre allows for the inhabitants by non-white, non-male protagonists and fantasies.